So I'm going to hit start recording and then we'll
All
just
right.
vamp for a minute. Now.
Is that what a nihilist is?
No, a nihilist is the guy from the negative zone that looks like a bug who wants to.
Someone who believes in nothing.
Who, want,
Lebowski.
who wants to. I don't remember what a nihilist's deal was. Did he want to conquer the positive matter universe?
Maybe.
I don't remember.
Probably.
Beings from other universes usually want to do things like that.
That's
Especially if
racist.
you're a bug person.
Jesus, Mike. Wants to consume all life in the positive mana universe using the annihilation wave. I mean, in Annihilation, yeah, that's what he wanted to do, but I don't remember what his general deal was. I've got the 3 books of the first Annihilation over there on the shelf. I don't remember why. It was a weird story. That's what the cosmic side of Marvel was doing, while the on Earth the whole Civil War thing was happening.
Oh, really?
If I remember correctly. So yeah. And since Civil War has never interested me as a story, Annihilation was pretty cool. Anyway. Right, that's long enough. We should get started. So here we go. No jam. Hello again and welcome to the Mana Pool. This is episode 722 of the Mana Pool. Yeah, that's right. I looked it up. And I'm Chewie. And I guess I have permadeath? Wait, I have permadeath. I'm fairly certain I have randomly generated levels. Am I a roguelike?
I think
oh my
you
god, I might be
be
a roguelike.
I'm Brian. I'm the lead rambler and tangent master of the group. And I absolutely have procedural generation. So I am chaos. So I completely generate randomly.
That's hot.
I'm Mike. I'm the rules guy and the game lore guy, and I definitely must use resource management to survive.
And I'm Dirk, the self-proclaimed greenest man alive and moral compass of the group. And I don't have anything. This is not the topic that plays to my strengths.
Fair enough. So, we're going to talk about roguelikes because we need something to talk about. And Brian was like, hey, we did RPGs a while back. It's been a while. Let's do another one. Let's do, I don't know, real-time strategy or roguelike? And I was like, real-time strategy is kind of thin. Because
I don't know. I feel like it could be its own thing. But
possibly.
we did settle on roguelikes.
But like every real-time strategy game I've ever seen is basically the same?
When
There's
you
not a
say
lot of
thin,
variation.
yeah, I maybe didn't understand what you meant by thin. They operate in incredibly similar ways. Yes.
Yeah.
But
But roguelikes, now that's something we can sink our teeth into because,
I'm not.
like most video game genres, roguelikes don't make any damn sense. Also, I'm going to go ahead and say roguelike isn't a genre. I don't think genre is the right word for roguelike.
Design framework is closer.
It's a systemic framework. That's a good way to put it, I guess. So, yeah. Roguelikes. Hang on, I got notes. So first up, I've played just an assload of roguelikes. I did an entire charity stream way back in the day that was roguelikes for charity, where instead of randomly determining which achievement to go for, like I have in the last two charity streams, I randomly determined which roguelike I was going to play next. So I've played a little bit, and I've played several a lot. Like, hang on, let me go to Steam, library, all games, sort by hours played. All right, first up was Cookie Clicker. That doesn't count. That's not played. Like, that's just, it's running in the background right now. Underlords, Hitman, Yakuza 0, Skyrim, Hades. There we go. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so my sixth most played game is Hades, which is a roguelike. 7, 8, 9th is Vampire Survivors, roguelike. 10, 11 is Roguebook, which is a roguelike. Balatro is on the second row. Slay the Spires on the third row. Dead Cells is on the third row. Forced Showdown is on the third row. Inscription is on the fourth row, which has a roguelike mode, which is where the vast majority of my time has been spent. Rogue Legacy 2 is on the same row as Inscription. Like, I love roguelikes. We'll get into that. So that's
I had a
that's
feeling
me.
this would be right up Chewie's alley.
Oh yeah, these appeal to me for a variety of reasons. So how about you guys? What are some, before we get into the nitty gritty? What are some roguelikes that you have played, if any?
I think mine is going to be fairly straightforward because I've heard of roguelikes. Chewie's discussed them with us, but I've been doing some research to try to get ready for this, and I was like, I played a lot of video games. How many of them are roguelikes? Turns out, by the definition of roguelike, not many at all. But I have played some that are more tangential and some that share some of the essential elements of roguelikes without checking like all the boxes, more just taking one or two elements. And one of the, I'm going to steal Dark's thunder. I'm going to do it because he brought it up in the text. But one of the ones I played the most of was Diablo. Diablo and Diablo 2 especially have some similar elements to roguelikes. Sorry, Dark.
Yeah, when I asked this
sorry.
in the group chat, Dirk goes, I played Diablo, and I was like, that's not a... Save it for the show.
It is.
But other... Sorry, go ahead.
I would say it is. It doesn't have to hit every little thing to be roguelike.
What I found was a category termed roguelike, which just reminds me of the lick from Zelda. But
those are likes from Zelda.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, they're the ones in the first Zelda that would eat your magic shield and make you say bad words because you got to go spend another 250 rupees to get another one.
Yeah, I did not like them at all. But that's about it for me.
How about you, Dirk? Dirk, you muted.
I own Hades. I have not played Hades. Do what?
What?
You guys there?
Yeah, we're here. We heard you mention Hades.
Oh, no one was saying anything.
Yeah, because you
were letting you talk.
I own Hades. I haven't played Hades. The only thing that the only thing that I've actually played that is the thing I saw was hybrid roguelike, where it's has elements, but it's not really purely a roguelike, and that again is the Diablo franchise. So that is my only take into roguelikes themselves. But like I said, it's not something that I've gravitated towards. It's something that I would be interested probably in trying out and playing, and I probably would like it. But there's just other things that I have a more of an interest in.
Understandable. And Mike.
So that's me.
Yeah. So for me, I played a ton of Diablo over the years. 1, 2, 3, Diablo Immortal. It's a little more roguelike if you factor in hardcore mode.
Yeah.
I also played an immense amount of The Binding of Isaac, which is a roguelike live action? No.
What?
Real-time shooter.
A
Live
real-time
action shooter.
As opposed to
Sounds
those
terrifying.
turn-based shooter.
Yeah, they're turn-based shooters. XCOM's a turn-based shooter.
I will come to your house.
Live action shooter sound.
That's the reaction I was expecting.
Live action shooter sounds like something that will get Jack Thompson to come to your house and sue you.
And then for a while I was under the impression that Kingdom of Loathing was also considered roguelike, but I thought more about it and was like, no, it really is not. It absolutely isn't. Not in the least.
I know of another one that Mike has spent some time with, because at least I'm pretty sure, because I'm fairly certain it's Mike's fault that I ever played it, and that's Desktop Dungeons. You remember that, Mike?
Oh, Desktop Dungeons, yes.
And Desktop Dungeons is like a actual
100%
like hardcore roguelike.
Desktop Dungeons is really fun. It's hard. I never ended up 100%ing it, but man, I tried because it was just that fun to play.
Yeah. I played it a lot back in the day, and I would mention it to Mike, and he would be like, "Oh, you gotta do something," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't even know the words you're saying. Because I was just
it was
goofing around.
I was so into it that I would like read up on strategy for it.
Nice. So, what is a roguelike? Okay, so roguelike, I'm taking this, I think, from Wikipedia. I'm pretty sure is where I copied this from. Roguelike is a style of role-playing game. I don't know why it says that, because it's not. Traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the player character. Which, the term roguelike comes from Rogue, a game from 1980 that was ASCII-based. And if you don't know what that is, ask your grandpa?
Yeah, I was going to say. When I was doing research for this, I saw screenshots of Rogue, and I'm like, "Ooh, this takes me back."
Yeah, so like I never played. I never played any of these old games because the first PC game that I remember playing was like Doom 2. So
yeah.
Way back in 2008 at the International Roguelike Development Conference 2008. Yes, this is a real thing.
I was going to say.
They came up with what's known as the Berlin interpretation because nerds love to quibble about crap that doesn't matter.
It's the best.
So,
Matters to somebody. A lot.
They came up with a bunch of high value and low value factors in determining if a game fit the very strict definition of a roguelike back then. With the release of Spelunky in I don't know when Spelunky actually originally released. It came out on Steam several years later. Spelunky came out in 08. Yeah, so at the end of 08, Spelunky came out, which we'll get into that, but that changed everything. So the high value factors in the Berlin interpretation of what is a roguelike are environment generation. So instead of like Super Mario Brothers where there are levels that you can learn, the levels or dungeons or what have you are procedurally generated so that you can't just learn the levels. Makes sense.
Yep. Every time you enter a level, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's permadeath, which means if your character dies, you're done. Start over.
Yeah.
Like the original.
I want to
Rogue.
make.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say I want to make a note of that one because I think it's one of the most interesting aspects to this, but I'll come back to it because I know you're kind of listing these off. So
Yeah,
keep moving.
I'm trying to get through the list. Shut the hell up, Brian.
Yeah.
Like the original Rogue, they're turn-based, and they're grid-based. Also, like the original Rogue. The original Rogue was a game where every time you pushed a direction or did a thing, a turn passed, and so all of the enemies would move or attack or whatever when you did, and that was a turn.
Yeah.
But you could stop and strategize for as long as you wanted. They are non-modal, which means all actions were always available to the player. No matter what's going on, you can always do the same thing. You know, move, attack, drink a potion, whatever. Some of the earlier... Now, I should point out, this wasn't like a hard rule. Not having some of these factors didn't discount something from being a roguelike. And
Yeah, it all built up into
These
a
are
score.
just the way that they determined the roguelike percentage. I don't know. Like I said, it's weird.
Yeah.
But the Berlin interpretation of roguelike comes up a lot, so I figured we'd cover it.
Yeah.
They should have a level of complexity that comes from all of the different systems in the game working together. There should be resource management, whether it's in early games like food and health. You know, you have to eat food every so often so you don't die. And if you take too much damage, you have, you know, ways to recover your health, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hack and slash, meaning that the goal is to kill the monsters, really. So those are the high value factors. The low value factors are there's a single player character. Okay. The monsters are similar to players, meaning they can do the same stuff players can do, move, attack, that sort of thing. There's a tactical challenge to the gameplay. All right. It's displayed in ASCII characters, which is clearly not required. That's why it's a low value factor. There are dungeons, and the game is loaded with numbers. It's all math. So there you go. That's the Berlin interpretation. Like I said, then in 2008, Spelunky came out. Spelunky is a platformer. Side-scrolling platformer, you know, with procedural generation of the levels and permadeath. And so it's run-based. So you do a run, you go through as many levels as you can, you get as much treasure as you can, you know, buy power-ups, whatever. When you finally screw up and die, whoop, start back at the beginning.
Yep.
And they... the term for these kinds of games that incorporate some of the like randomness and permadeath elements were called roguelites, because nerds can't help but be pedantic and can't resist the urge to, well, actually, I will not be using the term roguelite because language evolves and all video game genres are made up and stupid anyway, so shut up. Okay. This is also where roguelike that Brian keeps saying comes up, but that one has basically fallen out of favor in favor of roguelite, and now only nerds who desperately love the original like rogue and roguelikes are the ones who give enough of a crap to bother. It's not a roguelike, it's a roguelite. Shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have more important things to quibble over here, people.
What I was going to mention before was I find the permadeath not requirement, but the factor especially interesting because my first exposure to a rogue like, given that I really haven't played too many, has been through Chewie, which shouldn't surprise anybody. And
Hey, that's
a couple
me.
of years ago, he was raving about this game he was playing. And let me swear, I had a note about this, and my notes are
Rogue Legacy?
not. What's Rogue Legacy, and it's even in the name. And I saw some video of him playing it. If I think you were streaming at the time, because you've been streaming for a while
I
now.
was either streaming or I was putting the videos on YouTube. I can't remember at which point this happened.
Right. And I'm watching him do this, and he dies. And when he dies, he can take some of the coin that he's used and try to get stronger for next time. So I just thought because this was my first exposure really to roguelike, or what I understood to be roguelike, that was part of the process and then, Hades took this concept and turned it up to 11, right? So is this thought of, you're never going to make it through the first time, even if you're very skilled, but every time you lose, you can get upgrades and things like that, right? You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So I thought that was an intrinsic part of roguelikes. And later, when you're telling us about some of these games, and then especially when I'm doing the research for this, I'm like, I would never have guessed, just from my limited experience, that permadeath was one of like the pillars of this. Because when I'm reading about this and getting ready for this episode, there are a contingent of people that feel strongly, well, it's the internet. Somebody feels strongly about everything. But there are some fans out there that feel like it is a very high point value on this scale. So, and
Yeah.
I just would not have thought of that.
So
And that ability to carry over things into another play, like an ascension mechanic is what it's called sometimes, is common, but it's not a hard requirement.
yeah.
And it might not always be that you can carry over something tangible. It might just be that, okay, if you do well enough, then you unlock another choice that could show up in a subsequent run.
And
Mhm.
that seems to be the most common, at least in the many that I've played, is you unlock future possibilities rather than, making your character stronger.
Which is an interesting way to handle this, because one of the videos I've watched about this was talking about the original version of roguelikes versus, successors. They pointed out that in games where permadeath is not featured, the difficulty is kind of inversed, where when you think of a video game, think about Mario Brothers. The first world is probably the easiest world. There's some learning curve for how to jump, timing, things like that. But compared to World 8, that's the hardest. But if your character is getting stronger potentially as you lose, it's kind of like, there's some RPGs where by the end of the RPG you're basically just, a god. It's kind of like that. The further into the game you get, the easier it can be because you have set yourself up with all this extra strength. But if your repeats are about choices versus just direct power scaling, that's an interesting way to handle that phenomenon. Okay.
So these days, like your standard roguelike. Now, roguelike, as I said, is not I don't see it as a game genre. It's like first person isn't a genre. I'm working on this whole theory of video game genres. That I was talking to on chat last night while I was playing Power Wash Simulator. But You need a perspective description, first person, over the shoulder, isometric, top down. You need something. The show talks about the systems or the structure of the game, like roguelike. And then you need something that describes or Metroidvania, I would argue, falls under that. And then you need something that describes the gameplay, like platformer, shooter, puzzle, whatever.
Okay.
This is just a rough version of the theory. I'm still ironing it out. But roguelike structure can be applied to literally anything. So regardless of gameplay genre, in general, you involve the game involves a protagonist or a player character or whatever that starts at 0 every run. The levels or dungeons or environments or pathways or whatever are procedurally generated, which means that while chunks of it might be familiar or the same, it's not entirely the same. Like in Rogue Legacy and its sequel, which is it's not exactly a Metroidvania, but it's a sprawling platformer. You will run into rooms that you'll recognize. Like, oh, this is the room where you gotta climb up real far, and that's where there's an offering, a power-up. But the way that the different rooms are put together changes every time, so you can't just, memorize how to get to the good stuff. You've got to explore.
Yeah.
You'll find, again, in most of these games, this is the case. You'll find power-ups of some sort while you play through a run, which counteracts the rising difficulty as you go. And I've got description or examples of all of these across all of the different genres. And then when you die, you're done, and you start back at 0 again. Now, my favorite types of these games, like Rogue Legacy 2, because the sequel's way better, and Hades, are games where you have a meta progression system outside of the individual run, meaning that while your character starts at 0 every time, what 0 means can change. Like in Rogue Legacy, you're collecting gold the whole time that you kill enemies, you open chests, you get money. And then when you die, that money goes to your next character, which they can use to power up their stats or buy new armor or buy new whatever. So that's your meta progression. Like they can have, oh, look, it can get more attack and better HP using the money you got in the previous run.
Yeah.
And then in like Hades, you can get various collectibles, one of which is called Darkness, and you use the Darkness to upgrade his abilities, which changes your 0. So like at the beginning of the game, your little horrible wuss Zagreus, and then after a couple dozen runs, you have built up and you've got new abilities and whatnot that makes the game somewhat easier.
Mm-hmm.
And then others have a progression system outside of that. Once you get to where you can beat it, you can increase the difficulty using, like Mike said, ascensions in Slay the Spire, or in Hades, it's the Pact of Punishment, where you add more difficulty so that you can keep playing and get better.
Yeah, the new game plus.
Sort of, yeah. It's not really a new game plus. It's more of a, I've played this game so much that playing on easy is too easy, so let's go up to normal, and then let's go up to hard, and let's go up to freaking hard, and let's go up to I wish I was dead. So yeah, that's the basic structure of any game that is classified as a roguelike. Again, it's not all hard and fast, and as you can see, only like 3 of the Berlin interpretation actually goes into anything anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
that's so restrictive that all of these quote unquote real roguelikes are gonna be basically the same game.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas with the roguelike structure that we have now, you can, like I said, you can make any game any game genre a roguelike. Like I've got a list here just of the games that are in my library. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Hearthstone had a roguelike in it. The Dungeon Run.
It did. It
Yep.
did.
I freaking loved the Dungeon Run, because you start with a very basic deck, and then you could find upgrades and buffs and whatnot as you played, and the randomized levels, you had randomized opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. The one that I've been playing the most here lately is Balatro, however you say it. Whenever anyone asks the creator, Local Thunk, he says it's pronounced Balatro, but he types it out. But it's poker. It's literally poker. The difficulty comes from the target score you've got to hit. Your power-ups are your jokers you get, the cards you add to your deck, the upgrades you get to those cards, stuff like that. The randomization comes from, the randomization of power-ups and whatnot, but also which boss you get at the end of each ante is random.
Yep, I remember that.
And your progression is you unlock new stuff, new jokers, new whatever, for that become possibilities in future runs. So it's got all the elements, and if you lose, you're done. Start over. And I should know,
Yeah.
I lose a lot. Dead Cells is a 2D Metroidvania where the progression you get is new weapons and stuff that you can find that you can start with, as a possibility. When you start the game, you get, I think it's 3 options there's a randomized ranged weapon, a randomized shield, and a randomized melee weapon, and then 2 randomized items that are, like tools. And you pick which one you want, and then you go. So that's your meta progression, is unlocking more stuff that you could see at the beginning. But then as you play, you can increase your... Oh, something's stuck. Oh, God. Excuse me. You can increase your stats and, upgrade your weapons or find better weapons or whatever. Dicey Dungeons is a dice-based deck builder.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like you find different tools and whatnot and weapons and things, but the whole game is built around rolling dice, and all the characters are little dice people. They're so cute. Don't Starve is a top-down survival crafting game that is a roguelike, because once your little dude dies, well, start over. And everything's randomized, Enter the Gungeon, another super popular one, is a top-down shoot-'em-up. Hand of Fate is a deck builder with occasional watered-down Arkham combat. I love Hand of Fate, but mainly because of its aesthetics more than the actual game itself. Into the Breach is another one I've played recently. It's a turn-based tactics game. So think, like a Final Fantasy Tactics style thing, but you've only got 3 units, and you've got and everything is spelled out ahead of time. So like you'll see this character or this enemy is going to attack this square or this right here, and you can push them around or kill them or otherwise manipulate them or whatever. And your unlocks that you get for a meta progression are new squads and new units that you can use. Has anyone ever played any of the Mega Man Battle Network games?
I have not. I've heard of them. There was a TV show that was based on it that I saw a little bit of.
Yeah.
Were those roguelike?
No, well, I have no idea. I don't think so, but there's a roguelike called One Step from Eden that is essentially the gameplay from Mega Man Battle Network.
Okay.
So, again, it's a grid based shooter. It's hard to explain without visual references. Let's see here. Slay the Spire is one of the most what's the word I'm looking for? The one that inspired the most other games. I don't think it was the first. It wasn't the first roguelike deck builder, but it was the biggest by far.
Yeah.
The biggest archetype, maybe. I'm not sure if that's.
And it's a deck builder, and there have been deck builder games, especially physical games, forever. But this one is a roguelike one, and your progression is as you win runs or whatever, you unlock new cards for each character, which allows more strategies that you can formulate. And then let's see, Vampire Survivors is another one it's not really recent anymore, but
It feels to me it feels recent,
Yeah.
but
it's basically a new genre of gameplay. The term that I keep seeing is bullet heaven, because as opposed to a bullet hell where you're here trying to avoid all the bullets, you are the source of all the bullets. I always like I coined the term one stick shooter, because it's not a twin stick shooter where you move and shoot, one on each stick. It's a one stick shooter where you just move and the shooting happens automatically. But it's not, the randomization in it comes from the power-ups that you get, because whenever you level up, you get, here's 3 random power-ups you could have. Pick one or don't, whatever. But your progression in that is you unlock new weapons and new characters, and characters have different abilities, and the new weapons are different, and blah, 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 blah. And then one I haven't played, but was brought up in the Discord, is called Against the Storm. Are y'all ready for this? It's a
Probably
roguelike city builder.
Wait, what?
That's what I said. I knew there
What is
was a roguelike city builder, but I couldn't find it. And I couldn't remember if that was real or not, if I was just making stuff up. And then Infinius dropped in the Discord, yeah, Against the Storm is a roguelike one. And then later he goes, they've added boss fights into this somehow. And I don't know what that means, but it's a roguelike city builder.
I mean,
That's cool.
so I can picture like SimCity with like
What
a
game is this?
procedurally generated map, but
Against the Storm. I looked it up.
Against the Storm. Okay.
It looks really cool. Somehow I knew Dirk would he's like, if I'm going to roguelike, it's probably going to be this one.
Against the Storm.
So yeah, there are first-person games that are roguelikes. They're basically any freaking... You guys remember Peggle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's one called Peglin that is Peggle, but as a roguelike. No, I'm not kidding. This is real. So, yeah, it's because it's a structure of how the game works, you can adapt that to basically any kind of gameplay, and they have. Some are better than others, obviously, is the case in any video game, and there are a million roguelike deck builders. So, read reviews or talk to someone to see if you like any before you jump in. Like, another one that I mentioned that I didn't put on my list is called Forced Showdown. It's a deck builder, but it's also like a top-down arena, run around and kill all the enemies and go to the next level type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically a top-down shooter.
Yeah.
But it's also a deck builder. And it's a roguelike. So anyway. So that's me rambling about all of that. Where you guys want to go from there?
I was gonna say, you mentioned a Metroidvania roguelike at one point. I forget what the name of it was.
Dead Cells.
Dead Cells. And I tried to picture Metroid, not Metroid, but Metroid as a roguelike, and I'm like, that would be fascinating because if you had to do it all in one run with permadeath and procedurally generate environments. But then I got thinking about it, and so much of Metroid is about like, hey, here's a ledge you can't reach. Later on, you're like, oh, ice beam, I can freeze the guy. And if it's procedurally generated rooms, I don't know how easy it would be to do that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, the area where you have to freeze the dude to jump on it would just be set. Like this is a chunk that the level will have somewhere.
Okay. Because I know that like even in randomly generated things, there's still like set values for things. Randomizers have become their own thing lately, and there's ROMs and mods for all sorts of randomizers from what is it, Free Enterprise for Final Fantasy 4 to like how many Zelda randomizers are there? Like a bajillion. But they usually set it, like especially some of the Zelda ones or the Final Fantasy ones where, for example, in Final Fantasy 4, they randomize maybe like which bosses have which key items, but they're not going to block off underworld access without, like, it's not going to be hidden in the underworld, if that makes sense. So there's some means there is what I'm trying to get at. So okay, I can see that. I find this whole concept fascinating, maybe because I'm more coming at this from the outside. Unlike Chewie, I have almost no experience playing these. So
like the thing that I think, Brian, you might like about these
sure
is, well, the thing that I like about them anyway is that it, and I think this is a thing that I think Dirk would really appreciate, because Dirk is a Civilization player, and Civilization is famous for the one more turn, just one more turn, and then it's 3:00. I used to stream, like when I stream, I try to go for like 3 hours roughly, half an hour either way, but around 3. I accidentally streamed Hades for like 6 hours multiple times. Like I would be like, I'd get to the end of a run and be like, yeah, I'd look over at the time and it's like 2:30. Huh. And it's because it appeals to my probably undiagnosed ADHD. This is something Violet Moon said in the Discord, is that they especially for ones that are well done, like Hades. Ben just said, talk about how I'm bad at Hades and how that's a good thing. Right. So because of the permadeath, you take a run, you lose, you go, damn, and then you go, I bet I can do better, and you do it again. Like, but in games that have the meta progression or the narrative meta progression, this is why Hades is the best roguelike, hands down. Shut up. It utilizes the mechanics of the roguelike better than any other game that has existed at all.
Because, I have heard this opinion before, yes.
Yeah, well, I don't even think this is an opinion at this point. I think this might be objectively true. Because, okay, so the roguelike, the downside of the roguelike that some people see is, oh, you die and you got nothing to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
You attempted a run, you got almost to the end, and then you died, and now you got to start back at 0. Damn it, that sucks. And I get that. But like with Hades, story progression doesn't happen until you die and go back to the beginning of the game, because you start in the palace of Hades. Zagreus is the main character. Hades is your dad. The deal is Zagreus is like, I'm getting out of here, Pop. And he's like, all right, give it a shot. And you have to fight your way through the underworld up to the surface. That's the basic premise.
Mhm.
And along the way, you'll talk to various characters, and you'll get items that you can give to characters to increase your relationship with them and whatnot. But you collect these things that will push along your relationship and thus the story with all these characters during the run, and then back in the palace after you die and come back, that's where you progress all of that. So like, I was really good at Hades, so I got a lot more clears, right? So I had more of the weapons were powered up, and more of the my stats or abilities or whatever were higher, because I was collecting a lot of the rewards for doing well, but I was not super far along in any of the stories. Whereas Ben was not as good at the gameplay, but that means he died a lot more, which means he got to go back to the palace a lot more, which means he was way further ahead in all of the stories with all the characters than I was. Which is amazing, because Hades is the one roguelike where it didn't matter if you were good at the gameplay or not, you were still getting something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that
That really
fascinated me.
That is absolutely fascinating. Yes.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Whereas in Slay the Spire, if you get, to the boss on the third level, and then he beats you, all right, well, do another run then, nerd. Like,
Yeah.
That was one of the comments and criticisms I heard a lot about when people. I was reading articles, watching videos on roguelikes. Is some people are like, especially the pure ones. I say pure like the old school with permadeath. Some people were like, it is 100% skill based, because you don't level up. Your character doesn't level up. Your skills level up. But then at the same time, there's a lot of negativity of like, you get further and further and further, but when you die, it can be extremely frustrating to start all over again, and it can feel almost pointless. And at what point is a game not fun anymore? And I think we've all had that question. Like, there's certain challenge. I remember playing Final Fantasy X and trying to do some of the stupid side quests, like the chocobo racing or the blue butterfly catch, and I'm like, and I will come catch like 9 of the 10 butterflies, and then I'll lose the last one. And at one point, Carrie was like, "You've been trying to do this for 3 hours. Can we do anything else?" I'm like, "I'm so close, you know." And I'm not like having fun with it anymore. It's like me versus the game, and maybe that isn't
Yeah.
healthy after a while.
If I've been sitting there playing Binding of Isaac for like 45 minutes and then lose to some BS, a few screens away from the end of the run, that's aggravating. And it's only because it's such a fun game otherwise that I would even think of going back to it after that.
Hmm. But at what point is fun like some? And this is going to be a different question for different people. But at what point is it not fun anymore? At what
Yeah.
point is it just, this is a job that I need to get through? And
like-
we all here have other jobs, so
yeah. A lot of it in, these newer ones where there's power-ups and whatnot, which Ben just mentioned. He's like, it's luck based as well. Like, I'm not gonna say, some of these games are heavily oh my god, heavily RNG based, because they're not all heavily RNG based, but
heavenly.
it's definitely a combination of luck and skill. Like, if I like playing Balatro, if I get uh, an early, like in my first couple of shops, if I get an early Joker that has a scaling addition to my multiplier, the way it works is you have chips and mult, and it takes the number of chips you got from your whatever hand you've made up, your poker hand you've made up, and it takes the number of chips and multiplies it by your mult. So like the pants, the pair of pants, I forget what it's called, but that's a Joker that gives you every time you play two pair or play a hand that involves two pair, so two pair or a full house, then the mult it gives you scales up by one. So if you get that early, sweet, start playing two pairs and full houses, and that will grow your score. So if I get an early thing that starts has a scaling mult, then lucky. But then you have to have the skill to be able to use that properly, and scale it up enough to keep your head above water, because your target score goes up and up and up and up and up. But like if I have a Balacha run and I manage to get like a pair of pants early, and then a little while later I get something that has a times mult, so instead of adding to your mult, it multiplies your mult. That's where things start getting ridiculous. And sure, that was a good run, and I might win that run, but now I want to see how far I can get in endless mode.
Yeah.
Because once you finish the 8th ante, you can keep going. You've won, quote unquote, but you've got to... There's that challenge of how far can I get? And that's where the challenge kicks in. Sometimes you get lucky and you can coast through a run with no problem, but then you get hit with the brick wall after you've won. There have been a bunch where I coasted through the 8th ante, and then in like the small blind of ante 10, the score was nowhere near mathematically even remotely possible with what I had going, and I went, oh. Well, that escalated quickly, literally.
So what do you do?
Well, then you lose and you go,
situation.
well, that was fun, and you do another run, because I've already won that run. So I just start again. But like in again, in the games where like Hades and Rogue Legacy 2, I keep bringing those up because they're two of my favorites, where you can make your character better, make their zero that they start at better. Eventually you will gather up enough stuff to pump your stats up enough to counteract your, I don't want to say lack of skill, but you know what I mean. To where you'll be able to win more runs than you lose. And that's just different. That's a different place for everybody. Mm-hmm. Plus, Hades also has... Oh, what was the assist mode thing called? God mode or something like that? Where every time you lose, the game will adjust something, I forget what, to get slightly easier. And then,
God mode feels very on point.
You're right.
Hades.
Which is why I think that's what it was called. Ouch. But I got off on that whole tangent there, but the initial point that I was originally trying to make was that you get the, oh, I bet I can do better next time. Let's do one more run. It's like, oh, one more run. Oh, come on, one more run. Oh, I couldn't find the other part of the combo I needed to get there. Let's do one more run and see what I get.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I think, thinking about this, I have played multiple games, especially mobile games, where they will have a lot of mobile games, to try to keep people invested and investing in it, will run side events. Like there's a main story, especially for RPG-based ones. There's a main story, and then, hey, here's an event going on this week, because it creates new characters for you to pull, which is its own thing. But it also gives you like a way to something to do other than just, hey, you finished the main story or you're getting caught up or whatever. And I think I've played a couple where there are definitely side games that have roguelike elements. And I'm trying to remember this game I was playing maybe 2 years ago, and it came out with a side event that was enormously popular because it was kind of like a survival mode where it started pitting you against waves of enemies. But as you cleared out a couple waves, you would get a choice between you would pick one of three upgrades, and the upgrades you get every time were random. It was from a list of like 30 or so, but the three choices you got were random from that list. You had to pick one of them, and later on, you might be able to pick like level 2 of that particular upgrade, or you may never see it again as the enemies are getting harder. So it was kind of a survival mode, but it had a random aspect, and the enemies and the upgrades were procedurally generated in terms of what you were facing. So you really did not know what was coming next. So I feel like there were definitely roguelike elements put into that side game, even though those elements were not present in the main game itself, if that makes sense.
Sort of like
Because
the
so many of
dungeon
these,
run.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So many of these mobile games have to reinvent themselves if they want to keep people engaged, because there are hundreds of them, and they're
Yeah.
all competing for money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dirk, shut up.
Has there ever been a Magic the Gathering roguelike? I don't think there has. They've tried their hands at a couple different things, like Arena Fighters or something similar to that. They've done RPGs, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
No,
there
I
was
mean,
the Diablo-like thing there for a while that crashed and burned gloriously.
oh,
There was
I
Mana
was really looking
Strike.
forward. I was looking forward to the Diablo based one, and it lasted no time at all. If that's the one I was thinking of, from like a year or two ago.
I mean, it's probably longer than that, but yeah,
Old.
it looked really cool.
The
Yeah.
only thing that comes to mind that I can think of, and again, it's not a roguelike, but it has some of the elements. The discussion earlier about taking games and kind of modifying them so that they're, have those elements, would be like a Pokemon Nuzlocke.
Okay. For those that are
Uh,
uninitiated, what does that string of words mean?
so so you've played the game Pokemon before.
Nope.
So in it, the way a Nuzlocke works is, um, you when you move into an area, you can only capture one Pokemon in an area, and you can level it, do whatever. But if a Pokemon in your party dies doing whatever, then that Pokemon has to either be put into the bank or it has to be released.
No
And so
healing at the
it's
Poke Center.
considered like if the Pokemon's hit points hit 0, it's considered dead. And so
okay.
it cannot be. You can revive it, like you can keep it, but you can't play with it ever again in the run. And you can't collect like tons of Pokemon to be like, oh well, I lose one, that's fine. I've got like 15 from this region. No, when you move into an area, you can only capture one. And the way the old school Nuzlocks worked was you could only capture the first Pokemon you bumped into.
Jeez, I would have all the Weedles and
Yeah, so
nothing
if you went into an
else.
area and it was,
Go Zubat.
you got
Go
like a,
Zubat.
yeah, you're going, oh please Zubat, don't die on me, sort of thing. And so, yeah, it made the gym battles really hard because, if your first, if the Pokemon you catch, you go into the first gym battle. In the old games, there was only like 2 regions before, or 2 areas before you got to the gym. Well, that meant you had the starter and 2 Pokemon. So you went into the battle with 3 Pokemon. And if you chose the wrong starter, it's very likely your group, you know, you lost a Pokemon or 2 in that first gym battle, and so you're back down to 1 if you didn't lose all of them. And if you lose all of them, then you have to start the game all over.
Uh,
So there is
Yeah, I can
a
see
case
what
of
you're.
randomness. in that because you don't know what Pokemon you're going to get.
Yeah,
So,
it's not only a challenge run, but because of the addition of permadeath and the randomness of what you're gonna get, it it has roguelike vibes to it.
right. But I mean, you know what's, in the area, and with the new ones where you can actually see what's there, you can kind of pick what you want, but
Oh, that seems like cheating.
the rules are you can only capture one in an area.
Right. Okay.
Ben said there is a Pokemon roguelike. I'm gonna guess this is a mod or a fan game. It's called Pokerogue. You start with a starter
Pokerogue.
Pokemon, and then you can earn better Pokemon upgrades and items as you fight gym leaders. Huh.
Neat.
So yeah, there's, like I said, any game genre. So let's talk about Diablo, because
Yeah.
Dirk mentioned that in our original group chat, and I was like, what? And then while I was looking up stuff about it, I kept seeing Diablo mentioned, but never as a roguelike, but as like a roguelike adjacent sort of thing. Like, it's
I was
got some
telling
of the
the-
element, and I've never played a Diablo, but Diablo never struck me as anything remotely roguelike. So what in the hell are y'all talking about?
Well,
And I was mentioning on the pre-show that this is a popular enough question that even Google comes up with, did you want to ask if Diablo is a roguelike? What were you going to say, Mike?
well, yeah, and I think it's because there are some pretty big roguelike elements that it has, and some pretty big like opposites that it that it also has, and that puts the big question mark over it. Like procedural dungeon generation. I mean, that's what the game is.
Yeah.
You have
Really?
you have the town, you have
Yeah.
the last level of hell where Diablo is, and everything in between, procedurally generated dungeon
Oh yeah.
level.
I
It's
did
Diablo
not
was the
know that.
Diablo was the first game I ever played that did that, and that blew my mind. I was like, wait a minute, this room is different.
Huh.
yeah, they're different every time. It's always, there's it's the same kind of progression. You start in the you start in the church, you go deeper down into the caverns. Are the caverns? No, catacombs, then caves, then hell. Is there another one? I don't know. I
I
don't
played a
remember.
lot more Diablo 2 than I did Diablo 1. Diablo
Yeah,
1 was just frustrating.
but all of it is, and you'll see some similar structures in certain areas from time to time. And there are some side quests that use. There are some side quest levels that show up that use fixed layouts, but besides that, it's going to be different every time. Um, and the whole point of the game is kill the monsters and steal their stuff. That's what you do. It's
Yeah.
hack and slash. That's
And
the entire
and
point.
and their stuff random.
Yep,
Like
random drops.
like
Some of it's
from the
good,
jump.
some of it's crap, some of it's just whatever.
A random mob might drop an epic weapon that is better than anything else you will get for like the next 10 hours. Just like, here you go, because it also happens to poison and do all this other stuff. So
hmm
there's some scaling, I think, depending on like where you are in the game. Again, at least in 2, where the stuff later will tend to be better than the stuff early, but there's variables.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
um,
whole game is a lesson in randomness.
yeah. And let's see, you get to choose your character. You get choices about the character's progression as you level up. And each game in the series made different like quality of life choices about exactly how you do that. Um, the let's see, there is the scaling difficulty levels. You can choose different difficulty levels as you go. When you get to the end, you start over. But the ascension mechanic here in Diablo is that you get to take with you your character and as much as you can carry to start the next run. Sometimes you're not going to be able to complete the run on the first try. In Diablo 1, you can do it with the warrior with difficulty. It's a lot harder to try to do it with the rogue or the wizard. But as you accumulate more stuff with more runs, it gets easier to go through, and there is a bit of monster scaling. I'm talking about Diablo 1. There's a bit of monster scaling in Diablo 1. There's definite scaling in 2 and 3 and onwards more directly. That varies the difficulty level as you keep going and as you've gotten better stuff. But yeah, unless you're playing hardcore mode, there is not permadeath. There's death is a temporary inconvenience that gets even more temporary as the games in the series go on. And it gets a little more forgiving. But yeah, permadeath only applies if you choose hardcore mode, which is specifically about that. And then it kind of turns into a different game because you're not just in hardcore mode, you're not necessarily as tied to your character. You're just trying to play as well as possible.
It's true. I probably may I feel like I'm talking over you. So I played a little bit of Diablo 1. Liked it, but I found it difficult. Played the heck out of Diablo 2. And because Diablo 2 has all these difficulty modes, I enjoyed playing one character, starting on normal difficulty and then basically new gaming plusing with this character, and it was a sorceress, and just seriously because the branching skill trees, you can't be good at everything. You can't, but I liked that because it made the character feel unique. And I'm not gonna say I was great at it, but I got pretty good at it. And then at one point I tried hardcore with a new character, and I died very quickly, and I started again. I got a little further, but I got thinking, okay, I've played no joke, maybe 100 hours with this other character. The one I had played through the other difficulties. So to me, the thought of permadeath, thinking about dying in chapter 4 or something, which is very late in the game, just because, oops, I ran into somebody that I wasn't prepared to do, because sometimes that'll happen. I stopped myself from getting that far because I did not want to go that far and then lose everything. I think at that point that would have not felt like, oh, well, this was a worthwhile challenge. It would have felt like all the bad words forever. But that's my mentality. That's part of the reason I was playing the game was, let me see how far I can take this character. Let me see how strong I can make them. And the thought of investing time and energy into it to just be like, nope, was not worth it for me.
Yeah.
So, but hardcore mode definitely checks that permadeath box of the roguelike. Yes.
I don't
I
think
didn't
that
realize
that
you
one
didn't know.
works as well, ignoring the is it a roguelike or not, because that's a long ass game that's having permadeath added. So where if you go really, really far and then you die, it's like, oh.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Whereas, even some of the longer roguelikes aren't going to take that long, for a single
Yeah,
run.
and that's a good point, because hardcore in Diablo, it isn't about just doing run after run after run, because you don't get anything from that. It's about, kind of proving to yourself that you're a good enough player that you can level this hardcore character up really high without dying.
Yeah, because Diablo and Diablo 2 can be very difficult, especially like Dirk said, not Dirk, Dirk, shut up. Like Mike said,
Damn it,
there are parts in the game where even when you're fighting Diablo himself, spoiler alert, he's a boss. He will murderize
What?
you, but his health does not regenerate, so you can just like keep dying and coming back. Um, the thought of having to do that battle and death being final gives me hives. So because there are enemies in these games that will just be like, and you're dead. So hardcore, I think Mike is exactly right. Hardcore is like you're proving something, and you're proving it to yourself. And if you have mastered the game, I get that. This is why some of these like nightmare level difficulties exist, is for you to say, I got this. I've played this game. I get it.
I think Diablo has some special items that only appear in hardcore mode as like a reward for you taking that route. But besides that, yeah, it really is just about proving to yourself that you can do it.
Yeah, and that's what a bunch of the like the added difficulty things are in some of these games. Like Slay the Spire has ascensions. I played a lot of Slay the Spire. I never touched any of the ascensions because I was never good enough at Slay the Spire to feel like I could manage it. Whereas like Hades, which I don't ever think I said, Hades is a top-down, like fast-paced dungeon crawler. Where you go into a room, there's a bunch of enemies, you kill all the enemies, then you get two choices for which where to go next, and that's essentially that. And you just keep going and keep leveling up and fight a boss and go to the next world and blah blah. But you can add different difficulty modifiers using the Pact of Punishment. It's called adding heat. And I don't remember, each weapon that you use has its own heat level. And where's Hades? Hey, Hades. There's an achievement for earning the second of Skelly's prizes, which I think is, I want to say 16 heat. I think 32 heat is the max. I might be misremembering that. It's been a hot minute since I played Hades. But I'm fairly certain like my highest weapon heat is at something like the early 20s. Because, you know, why not? Let's see if I can keep going. And I know that Al, who you hear me call out at the end of every episode because he's a lifeguard.
Patron.
Al, he played Hades and he focused on going quickly. Like, the last option that I would ever check is the time limit in the heat, and that was his first. He was like, yeah, I got through World 1 in some time, and I was like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm in like the third room by then. He's like, we play very differently. I'm like, you think? So you can, Hades especially, you could tailor, you know, you want to make the bosses harder and then make more enemies spawn. Okay, well that's, you know, you check all those options, that's this much heat. Or you could make all of the enemies have a shield that takes, essentially, which negates your first attack on them. That isn't so bad, or something like that. Or you could make it to where all the enemies that spawn have, you know, 20% more health, including bosses. You know, stuff like that. You take more damage from lava and spike traps. That was one heat addition. You know, stuff like that. There were a bunch of options that, like I said, it's been a hot minute since I played, so. When's the last time I played? April 20th of last year. So I can't remember all of the options, but it was you have to give up. One of the options you can check is you have to give up a boon of some sort to go to the next world. Which I like my boons. You know, those are your power-ups. That's what's making you stronger, and I've got to give something up. So that's another one I would very rarely choose. Even though I ended up with several that, probably didn't matter. Those are mine. Yeah. Oh, shops are more expensive was another one, by some percentage. Like I said, and 32 heat is the max. I'm pretty sure, and it's one of those that was only theoretically possible for a very long time, because in order to overcome all of, because that's with all of your difficulty modifiers maxed out, and in order to be able to do it, you would have to get a very specific series of power-ups because one of them was still time limit, and everything is way harder, and there's way more of everything, and everything everything sucks. So you would have to, like, the Hades community figured out, you're really only going to be able to do this if you get, like, this progression of power-ups, which are randomized, in this order, and then you might have a hope. And I remember watching a video about why 32 heat hasn't been beaten yet, and then like a month later it was like, oh, and someone beat it. I was like, what? Because statistically somebody trying to do so will eventually get the right string of power-ups. And then they did, and they beat it. And I was like, holy crap.
Oh, sure. Even as statistically impossible as it may be, an infinite number of monkeys at typewriters, blah, blah, blah. You figure
exactly.
how many people are playing Hades? A lot.
It's a lot.
It is not a small number.
And now Hades 2 is in early access. Once that full releases, I'm going to dive back into that.
What do you think is your favorite aspect of Hades?
Zagreus?
The main character?
Yeah, Zagreus is... He is the epitome of non-toxic masculinity. Like, he's way strong and way smart, but he's always nice to people, and he's trying to help, and like just all of his interactions with all of the different characters of all the different flavors, even his dickhead dad, who Hades is, they were all just good. I really loved the way Zagreus was portrayed. The writing team at Supergiant is just just chef's kiss. Plus, you could get a hot dom mommy to step on you. Not mommy, because not his mom or his stepmom or whatever. No. But the hot fury, you could have a relationship with her, and every time she would speak, I was like, will you please step on me? Because I don't know what they did to her voice, but oh my God.
You were always more of a Liliana fan than a Chandra fan. When they released Professor Onyx, you were like... You seemed really happy with that iteration of the character.
I got the librarian thing going.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was... I mean, I loved the progression and the gameplay. Like, you had... Oh, God. 6? Sword, spear, shield, bow and arrow. Sword, spear, shield. Gloves, bow and arrow, gun. Yeah, you had 6 different weapons. Each weapon had... Is it 4 variations? Or aspects? It's either 3 or 4. One of which was just weird. So it had 3 that were, different enough but worked. And then one that was just like, what? And each one played drastically differently. And then I really loved digging through all of those and figuring out which ones I was best with. I am best, it turns out, with the sniper rifle. Is what I call it. The first shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first shot you take with it is like instead of a brrr, it's like a bow, and it's like a sniper shot, and it does stupid amounts of damage. So that's my weapon that has the most heat, because that's the one I played the most, because that is ridiculous. It's the aspect of Hestia, I want to say, which doesn't make any sense, but they were running out of gods at that point.
Well, she was the goddess of the hearth, and
Yeah, so of course she's got a sniper rifle above the fireplace. What?
yeah, it's a red state. So,
but like, I loved everything about Hades. I gotta say, like I said, the meta progression made it, like, gameplay wise, made it matter. The story progression made it to where when I died, I was like, sweet, let's go see who's in the house. And maybe, no, not Theseus. Who's except Theseus. Yeah, that guy sucks. He's the one of the two bosses of Elysium, and he's the worst. But no, Achilles. Yeah, oh dude, maybe Achilles is in the house, and I can push along my storyline with him. And you'd run into someone in each world. Like, I used to love it when I would see that I could go see Sisyphus. Sisyphus in Hades is nothing like Sisyphus. He is like the happiest, go luckiest dude. He's like, "Hi, Prince, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, buddy." He is a sweetheart, unlike Sisyphus of myth, who was the worst.
well, yeah, because, yeah.
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 And then in the second world, you could run into Orpheus's lady, Eurydice.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the third world, you could run into Achilles' dead boyfriend, Patroclus. Is that his name?
Patroclus, that's right.
Yeah. And each of those, one, you can speak to them and give them the gift to build up the relationship with each one and all that. But also, they had a gameplay purpose for being there. And so anytime I would see one of them, it didn't matter if I needed to go see them or not. I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. The game just made me want to keep playing in a variety of different ways, is what I'll say. That's why I keep hyping up Hades, because it is by far my favorite roguelike that I have played, and I've played a lot. It's the reason it's the most played one in my library here.
We could have done a Chewie Talks About Hades episode, and I would have been absolutely fine with that, because clearly you love this thing. I also understand from little bits that I've seen, I haven't watched your stream on it, but I've seen a couple others and introductions and whatnot, that the art is just dead, get it? Gorgeous. Just like...
Oh,
I think
and you could
in
pet
the
the
Penny
dog.
Arcade. What's that?
And you could pet the dog.
And you can pet the dog. Hey, that's always a good sign. In Final Fantasy 16, you have a dog, and when it's next to you at certain points in dungeons, you can hold X to play with the dog and give it a treat. So, A++.
Renee has been playing Fallout 4 a lot, and I did not realize just how cute, because I'd never played 4, I did not realize just how cute dog meat is. Like, she gave him a little bandana and little goggles and gave him a teddy bear, and when you first give him the teddy bear, he will play with it. And then periodically when he'll pick an idle animation to do it, and if he's got the teddy bear in his inventory, he'll pull it out and play with it. And I was like, The dog you can pet in Hades, though, is Cerberus, naturally.
Of course. 3 times as much dog fun.
You only pet the one head though, because you just do. Apparently, Zagreus has learned. But like I said, with Hades, I went hard on it and I kept upping the difficulty, and whatnot. In Slay the Spire, I never did. In Rogue Book, which is a Slay the Spire alike, like it takes what Slay the Spire did and tweaks it and adds some things and changes some things up and whatnot. I messed with all of the difficulty modifiers on that.
What we've talked about a lot of roguelikes tonight. I did watch a stream of you, and I've watched maybe 2 episodes of it, playing a card game where you're in a really dark room and all the cards are like animal based, and I think this was a
that would be
roguelike.
Inscription.
Inscription. Okay. Is that a roguelike?
Once Inscription has a roguelike mode after you finish the main game.
Okay. I don't mean to
And
take us off topic. I just want to make sure it wasn't Slay the Spire. So
the individual attempts like to play through the main game are basically roguelike-ish, but because there's an overarching story and whatnot, it's not exactly roguelike-ish. But once you finish it, which everyone should play Inscription, you should all go in blind, it will blow your freaking mind, which is why I refuse to talk about it. You just have to play it. But
Gotcha.
after that, it unlocks Casey's mod, and you can roguelike the hell out, the hell out of it, and it's good. When not the last time, because that was for the Eclipse, but the time before that I went to go visit Megan and Casey played just an ass load. It was right before I started playing Inscription. She just played an ass load of Inscription on her PlayStation. And I would be like, wait, I don't want any spoilers. She's like, no, this has nothing to do with the game. Or with the story mode. This is the roguelike thing. Shut up, Chewie. I'm like, oh, okay. And it's a lot of fun to just keep playing with. But there are difficulty modifiers for that too. And if you do them all at once, then you get the Skullstorm achievement, which was on the list for the Chivos for Charity, but thank God it didn't come up. I have done entire streams, I think 3 or 4, of we're going to try to get the Skullstorm achievement. No. Because you have to turn on, like, it's called Skullstorm because you have to turn on all of the difficulty skulls. Sort of like Halo. You have to turn on all the skulls and then try to win a run. And it is not easy until you win, and then apparently it's a piece of piss.
There are so many games that, like, especially with some random elements where it's impossible, then all of a sudden you break through something or you get one lucky drop or whatever, and it's like child's play.
Yeah.
Which, hey, they say child's play like it's this negative thing. Kids play games to have fun. Sometimes you just want to be like, bam, boom. You know?
Stuff like that, it feels really good when it happens in the games where the mechanics are such that you can get really out there interactions between certain things. And that's one of the other stuff I was reading when I was prepping for this a little bit, talks about emergent gameplay strategies as part of some of this, if the game mechanics are complex enough, like that's something that you can really play for in Binding of Isaac if you know what you're going for, and if you happen to find an item that you can do something funky with, if you find a few other things to go along with it. There was one combination that I was never able to replicate, but I still remember. It's like I ended up with very large shots with long range that would go around me in a circular pattern and also like wave back and forth while they were flying. So after all that had kind of come together, I'd walk into a room, hold down the fire button, and there'd just be this cloud of shots that would start filling the room. It was crazy. Like the game would lag sometimes because there were so many shots filling up the screen.
Oh, that's
And it
good
felt
stuff.
awesome, but no, I was never able to replicate that. And thinking about those interactions made me remember another game that I had kind of forgotten about until we started talking. It's something that I think I originally backed on Kickstarter and had some fun with for a while. I think it eventually made it to Steam. It's called Nova Drift. It's a roguelike space shooter, um, like asteroids or whatever. Uh, that was really cool and had mechanics that could interact with each other in that way. Ship upgrades and shot upgrades and little helper bots that might be flying around with you. Um,
Oh yeah, this looks cool.
yeah, so it also has some opportunities for some crazy combos if you can get them to come together during the run. And that's another one where, as you do better and you do better, you'll start to unlock more options, and not just for things that can drop during the run, but also difficulty modifiers that are also score multipliers as you go through, so you rack up points faster as you add those difficulty modifiers to the run. But yeah, Nova Drift I had forgotten about that until we got more into talking about this and talking about mechanics.
That just came out in August of last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
well, on
think
Steam.
the last time I played it was multiple years ago, so I guess he was working on it for a while.
Yeah, because it says Nova Drift version 1.0 released August 12th, 2024 on Steam. So,
Oh, well, good for him.
but yeah, this looks cool.
It is.
Nice. Yeah, one of the things that I really like about Balatro, the poker one, is I keep saying that for people, who they were just throwing out game names. And for people that don't know it, they're going to be like, huh? Balatro was made by one guy who is known only by his handle, Local Thunk. And apparently in his Discord, people will pitch ideas and whatnot, and you can really get a vibe for the way that he thinks about game design by the way he talks about these things. And like someone was like, hey, what if you had a Joker that did something and a Joker that did something else, and when you get them both they'd fuse together? And he was like, no, you're not doing, well, he said specifically, we're not doing Exodia style Jokers. You assemble all the pieces and you win. He's like, I don't want anything that is meant to be put together. I want every Joker to either succeed or fail on its own. That way you get more of the emergent gameplay, which admittedly is way less in a poker game. That just means your scores will go stupid in different ways. But he's like, I don't want anything specific like that in this game. And I was like, I like that. But apparently he's also working on overhauling one of the stakes. So the difficulty modifier in Balatro is the stakes. You start with white stake and it goes up through, 10 steps to the gold stake. And each one adds some kind of difficulty modifier and all the ones previous. And there's one, I don't remember which one because I haven't played enough of Balatro to actually memorize all of this, but there's one where it's the difficulty modifier it adds is it removes one of your discards. Like you start with, let's say, 4 hands and 3 discards. So you can pick any number of cards in your hand and discard them, and you'll draw that many back. Use that to try to form a poker hand. And then you've got, a certain number of hands that you can make to try to hit the target score. Makes sense, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
but he said recently he really hates the one that just removes a discard. He hates it because it makes, for that stake and all the stakes all after it all the way up to gold, it makes trying to do anything other than like three of a kind or less really impossible because you don't have a way to shape your hand. You know, you can't try to build like a flush run.
Yeah.
Because you don't have enough discards to dig for your hand properly.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I really hate it, and he's been working on a retool of that stake. Is that purple stake? I can't remember. And hopefully, you know, he'll drop that soon because I've only gotten to beaten gold stake with one deck, and it's one of the easier ones. So it's the deck where instead of 4 suits, you've only got 2 suits. And so playing flushes is nothing.
Yeah.
And I managed to beat the gold stake on that after several tries. And I have not been able to even get to the gold stake with any of the other decks. Mostly because I started messing with the challenges and stopped just grinding. There are so many different decks, and each has different abilities. Like there's one... the first 2 are like, oh, you get +1 hand, and then the next one is you get +1 discard, and that's it. But then later ones are like, I forget what it's called. Is it plasma? Where instead of your chips and your multiplier, it still puts up, you know, the chips you got from this hand and then the multiplier you got from this hand, but then it balances them out. So, you know, if you've got, you know, 500 chips and a ×2 multiplier, which would ordinarily get you, you know, 1,000 points.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it moves stuff over until instead of 502, it's 251 times 251. So the early game is way easier, but then the end of the game gets hard. For me, anyway. But, yeah. There's one where there are no face cards in the deck. The abandoned deck. And so it's way easier to do like straights because you got less cards. But also your deck is much smaller, so you can shape it to do, you know, what you want more. So you like, that's the deck I started with. You start with 40. How many face cards are in a deck? 312, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you start with, instead of 52 cards, you only start with 40. No. And one of the achievements is get your deck down to 20. And I managed to do that on the ante that I lost. And the achievement popped, and then I played a hand and lost and went, so yeah. Anyway. But yeah, that's one where I did all the difficulty modifiers all the way up on one of the decks. And I'll get to it eventually for all of them, but that's going to take a while, and I got a lot of other games to play. So yeah. But I get to wrap things up because it sounds like we're all about to pass out.
I think we're pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I really
clearly
enjoy,
this has been.
I really enjoy the repetitive. It's, some people use repetitive in a bad way. I don't mean it in a bad way, but the fact that it works really well for streaming too. You know, you take a run and you go, oh, that worked, or oh, that didn't work. Let's try it again and see what we get. Is it's fun to me. It scratches an itch that I wasn't aware that I had until I played Rogue Legacy, which was, I think, the first one I ever played. I'm pretty sure. And I was like, oh, I get it. This is cool.
Mm.
And I think that's why a lot of people enjoy roguelikes, because of that. Like, it's familiar, so you're not diving into the unknown with every, like for a new game, you know, you're diving into the unknown. I don't know what this is going to be like. but it's the same game, but it's different. So it's repetitive, but not tediously repetitive. So and it's known, but there's enough randomization to where it's not. You don't. You can't plan around it. You know, whether it's with the procedural generation of levels or just the randomness of what power ups and where things are located and whatnot.
Yeah. I think, especially from a Diablo perspective, not knowing the layout of a dungeon is always
Hmm.
interesting because then you have to like feel your way through. But also with the weapons, like beating a random guy and you pick something up and you're like, oh, it's a weapon. And then you look at it and you're like, oh my God, this is like if Excalibur and I'm trying to think of another legendary weapon, but Frostmourne had, had a baby. Like that feeling like finding a unique treasure where you were never expecting it that has a real like oh yeah juiced feeling, you know what I mean? So and and
Yeah,
and it's and it's really the procedurally generated stuff makes that easier like um, it's easier to accomplish with that because no matter how many times you've run this level you don't know what you're going to find.
exactly. Yeah.
I've really I feel like this has been a really good discussion, and I don't have time to play a ton of games anymore. Um, but I definitely think I want to try some of these. I found some interesting ones when I was doing some research for this, like just examples of roguelike games. So, and a lot of them are the ones that Chewie mentioned because turns out, in case you haven't been listening for the last hour and a half, Chewie likes roguelikes.
Yeah, and I
But
also really love game design.
mm,
So whenever I hear of a new thing that's been added, a new genre that's been turned into a roguelike, I'm like, huh, how'd they do that? I want to see how they did that. Like I'm
mhm,
looking up Against the Storm soon to see how they did a roguelike city builder. I've got to know.
yeah, that has sounded fascinating to me. So
Well, should we
yeah, this
final
is
our thoughts then?
we should final our thoughts. And just a little while ago, I was kind of metaphorically tapped on the shoulder. I'm alone in the office, but somebody did reach out to me, and I'm like a client, and I'm like it's after 9 o'clock, but whatever. My final thought. This is a really interesting discussion. Um, I on Monday of this week, finished with air quotes Final Fantasy 16. I went to the
Oh,
final area, beat the final boss, sat through almost an hour of credits. Like Carrie finished a book while the credits were going that she's like, I thought this was going to be over like half an hour ago. I'm like, yeah. But you keep in mind, it takes more people to make a video game these days than it does to make a movie, especially a video game like a AAA game. And it was wonderful. I enjoyed it. And then at the end of everything, after the post credit scene and all that, it's like you've unlocked new game plus, and I'm like, I'm
Brian went.
happy. Yeah, I'm happy, but like I just also, after sitting on Seven Rebirth for months and avoiding spoilers, I picked it up over the weekend, got far enough into it to discover a side game that is a collectible card game, and I said, "Oh no, goodbye story progression because no." And I'm like, and Carrie was watching me, and I'm like, you have to help me figure out this game because I've lost to the first guy 5 times in a row. And she's like, you need to push more into their territory. I'm like, that's a thing, and then I did it, and Carrie is already further along with this than I am. Point is, much as I love 16, I was ready to be like, okay. And it's like, yeah, you can get level. You have new game plus. You can keep all your stuff. The level cap goes from 50 to 100.
Ooh.
And in case you're thinking about skipping story or whatever, there's going to be new stuff and new equipment. I'm like, son of a, like, I'm
Maybe later, bruh.
happy. Yeah, but I've spent like 70 hours in this game, which is I don't have 70 hours for anything these days. That was several, like a couple weeks of Carrie and I were between TV shows after Sam goes to bed, so I'm just like getting as far into this as I can. And I'm like, yay, but also like might come back to this later. As much as I love
Yeah.
my dog, Torgal. You asked me when I started this game a couple months ago, Chewie. You asked if I liked the main character, Clive, and yes, I really do. He's like if Squall had a personality that didn't make you want to punch him in the face. This is a guy that has actually gone through like legit tragedy and loss, but you still pull for him and he doesn't make you feel bad for playing him. So yeah, I really like Clive. I don't know what the
Nice.
internet says or people's reactions were, but yeah, he is an A plus protagonist.
I have no idea. Weirdly, I haven't heard much about 16, which usually isn't a good thing, but the things I have heard were, this is fun. And I'm like, well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
The main
Yeah,
complaint I've heard about Rebirth is that it's sort of like a Hideo Kojima game. Like the game needed an editor. Somebody needed to sit the devs down and go, stop adding stuff.
Yes, that is how it feels.
I will get back to you once I've gotten a little further in that. I'm still in the first town. Well, I finished the prologue, but yeah, I am not at all far in that. So,
Palm is a very
gentlemen,
pretty city.
I'm going to go. I've loved this discussion. I will talk at everybody later. I'm gonna
Right.
go
Hey,
pick
Brian.
up some roguelikes.
All right.
Yes.
Something that I wanted to say before you drop is that I think roguelikes will scratch the same itch, in theory anyway, as some of the mobile games you play. Which is why I'm pretty sure if you could find one in a genre that you really wanted to play, you would fall in and live there.
I am seriously considering downloading Hades at some point, especially if it goes on sale. Because you can get it for the PS, right? For the PS5, I'm pretty
I'm
sure.
almost
So
certain, yeah. I think it's on everything.
yeah. In which case, again, goodbye. Like not just for tonight, but like whatever happened to Brian? He started playing Hades. So yeah. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Night,
Right.
baby. How about you, Dirk? You've been relatively quiet.
It's been a week. I'll go with the little bit of distressing stuff first. Just my dad's not doing all that great health wise, so that had weighed a lot on my mind.
Oh no.
This week, but hopefully he'll get a little bit better. But he's getting old enough and up there where health wise things are not getting better. But on a lighter note, the Lunar Remastered came out, and I started playing that, and that is a very fun remake of the game. The one thing that has done a lot for me is, like in Final Fantasy, the Pixel remasters, how they let you auto battle. That the Lunar Remaster lets you auto battle, and it speeds the whole thing up. Like you can speed it so where like when you go in and you fight stuff, the battles resolve in about between 5 and 10 seconds. And so you can just go in, clear out a whole area, and then go heal. Go get yourself healed up, and then go back, and all the monsters respawn. So you can level grind in an area in 30 minutes, you've level grinded up. Like when I first played it and started doing the level grind thing, I had gained 7 levels in the span of like 20 minutes.
Nice.
And that over leveled me for what in the area I was, like really over leveled me for where I was. And so that combination of auto battle and speeding the battles up makes the game like I actually can pay attention and do the story instead of being like, oh god, I have to do all this, I need a level up and I need a level grind, but this takes forever, and you have to give everyone their individual commands and everything. Nope. This makes the whole experience so much faster and so much more enjoyable. And so I've been going through the game and I have been thoroughly enjoying going back through it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing from back in the PlayStation 1 era, like the same graphics, same everything, just the game just moves a lot better because of just those two things, auto battle and speeding up the battles, like battle speed. So yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
Say auto battle in the Pixel remasters for Final Fantasy has been just a glorious addition.
Oh, it is, especially with Sabin's attacks, like his blitz.
Yeah,
they're just times like I am so tired of, and the fact that you don't have to do the command and then like, okay, did I do it right? It literally is like, this is what you want to do, just do the motion. Oh, you messed up, don't go, just do it again. Do it again. There you go, good job. And then you just auto battle, and it just, yeah, it's a glorious thing.
Yeah, the first time I auto battled and he actually did a move in auto battle, I was like, oh, that works. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I re-downloaded 6, thinking, I'm up to the World of Ruin, going, I really need to get back in and see if I can finish that up. So, like, I'm up to on the Wii, or not Wii,
Wii.
the Nintendo
Switch.
On my Switch, I have that, and I'm up to Kefka's Tower.
Oh,
like
wow.
I have everything's good to go. I just have to finish Kefka's Tower, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. So I'm gonna try and do it on the computer at some point.
Yeah, on my stream, I got to the World of Ruin. Like we tried and failed. We lost. The world got destroyed, and now I got Celeste, and I was like, oh. So that's the last time I streamed, so I've got to start getting the band back together.
Mm-hmm.
And go depose the evil villain who's screwing everything up. Hang on, are we talking about a video game still?
One would think. One would hope. So, well, that's my final thoughts. So I bid everybody adieu and have a good night.
Night, Zerk.
Good night.
Well, before Mike goes, I'm going to remind everybody, go to patreon.com/themanapool, become a lifeguard, get you the odds and ends, and the sponsorship shout out. The odds and ends are current. You believe that? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I posted last week's when we didn't do a stream or a show last week. I posted the odds and ends and was like, look at that. Caught up again.
Mm-hmm.
But let me thank our mythic lifeguards. Al, hey, we mentioned him earlier. Kim Ho, Scuzzo, Jake Jansons, Michael, that guy sucks. Team ULSRU, Violet Moon. Jason Kaus, Casey, Jason Doan, ALK Alters, and Andrew Odie. So thank you all so very much for your support, and all of you out there in every way. Thank you so much. So how about you, Mike?
Let's see. One other thing that I remembered when we were talking, that didn't get mentioned was I did play just a little bit of Crypt of the Necrodancer. I think Austin was the one who told me about that. It's a roguelike dungeon crawling rhythm game.
Yep.
Where it has that key element that it's turn based and the monsters move at the same time you do. The thing is that if you're playing one of the normal modes, you're supposed to be moving in time to the beat. So you have to strategically time your movements and your patterns with what you've learned in, this run and the previous runs about the enemy's behavior patterns to get in their faces and beat them without having them tear you to shreds. That was actually like a little too stressful for me when I was trying to learn the game. So most of the time that I spent playing it was with the one where there's one character where you aren't bound to the beat. You can go at your own pace, which kind of defeats part of the point of the game itself. But it was still enjoyable, and I did eventually end up playing more of the proper, one of the proper rhythm-based characters where you have to keep moving continuously, and they're like two very completely different games. Playing it the intended way versus playing it that other way. Very different feel. It's harder, but it's more exciting when you're having to stay in constant movement.
Yeah, that's one that I have. But like you said, it seems super stressful. Because, I am extremely white. So my rhythm is not the best. I'm not as white as, like, Brian. Because nobody's as white as Brian. But, like, it always seemed just outside.
The music is pretty obvious.
It always seemed just outside of, like, my enjoyment. Like, I think if I'm going to play a rhythm-based game, I'd rather play Hi-Fi Rush, which is a, third-person spectacle fighter, rather than a...
Yeah, but it's like, if you can play something like that, and if you can play Beat Saber, you can follow along to Crypt of the Necrodancer. The music is, composed and mixed in an obvious way where you can follow the beat.
And you got the little thing at the bottom of the screen.
That's right. There are on-screen visual aids.
Yeah. One of these days I'll get around to it. I mean, it must be good because it was so good that Nintendo let them do a Zelda version. So.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it's Crypt of the Necrodancer Hyrule Edition on the Switch, I think is what it's called.
Hey.
Cadence of Hyrule. There we go. Yeah, the Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer. There we go. So, like, it's got to be good and popular and, accessible enough to where it's probably all in my head. But it is in my head.
It is. It's fun.
Like, I think... Yeah, that... Stark sent that to me on Steam many years ago. Jesus Christ. And I was like, oh, that looks like something I would want to play. And then I just haven't, because, like I said, probably because I've built it up in my head as a thing that I wouldn't be able to do. Which is not true, because I can do anything, damn it.
Of course.
I forget what it was. There's some game that I've beaten, like, on the super hardest difficulty. And so whenever I run into something difficult, I'm like, look, I've beaten this. I can handle this crap. Cuphead used to be one. It's like, look, I've beaten Cuphead, so this should be
Uh-huh.
nothing. And then usually it is. Anyway, as far as my, are you done? By the way, my bad. Okay. As far as my final thought, I don't know. I've been playing. I finished Sniper Elite 3 since I decided not to do it on stream. It was a lot of fun. Yet, as seems to be the case in every Sniper Elite game that I am aware of, the Nazis are building a super weapon, and only you can stop them. And in this case, it's a tank, Mike, but it's a multi-story tall tank. Called the Rat, R-A-T-T-E. I don't know if that means anything different in German, but yeah.
Yeah,
And
I've read about some of the design plans for that.
That was a real thing?
There was a plan for it. It was never constructed.
Well, I mean,
'cause it would have
obviously,
been absurd.
but they didn't just pull this out of their ass
Yeah.
so you could shoot Nazis? Whoa.
No, yeah, that was a real pie in the sky plan of the Third Reich.
Huh. Well, I will be damned. But I really enjoyed Sniper Elite 3. So much so that when I saw Sniper Elite V2 Remastered was on sale for like $6, I picked it up. So now I have 2, 3, 4, 5. All I'm missing is 1 and 6. Oh, and Ben dropped a link to Wikipedia in the chat. A 1,000-ton tank. Okay. Length, width, height, 11 meters. That's 36 feet tall. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. It was, I was wandering around in this big ass, like the final level in this big ass, like warehouse factory type place. And I was, running around and distracting Nazis with noise and then shooting them and whatnot. Sneak up, stack them in the back. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And I didn't realize that thing over there, directly to my left, was actually a giant tank for way too long. Until I was sneaking around, I was like, why does this look like a tank tread? And I went, oh my God. I was like, this is the Rat? Jesus. It was, I kind of wish I had been streaming that, because my discovery of it was like, oh my God.
That's great.
But yeah, I finished that. I was playing that a lot. I've been playing a lot of XCOM, the first of the new ones. I know it's very old now, so it's not new, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. XCOM from 20, whenever that was, 16. Yeah, the first of the new ones. Damn it, you know what I mean. I forgot how much I love that game. I did the tutorial, because I never did the tutorial, and I did the tutorial to get the achievement in the charity stream, and I was like, oh my God, I love this game. And I did some fiddling to get it to work on the Steam Deck. I had to do 3 bits of fiddling to get it to work on the Steam Deck. And I've been playing it out there a lot. I did the base assault, the base defense, where the aliens come into your base and you have to hold them off. And that's the one place in the game where well, maybe not the one, but it's the first major place in the game where you can just game over and have to reload a save. Like in any other mission in the game, if all your team dies, it's like, whoop, that sucked. And you go back to the base and you're like, I guess we got to get my B team up or whatever, get new soldiers. But if you lose the base defense, you lose. And it was very stressful. And oh my God, it was so stressful. At one point, one of my 2 assaults, because I could not get another assault class, got mind controlled.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And I was like, I just need to kill the stupid thing that's mind controlling him. He started shooting all the rookies. I'm like, okay, he can shoot the rookies all he wants. I don't want to kill him. He's half of my entire assault class. I think I actually ended up reloading a save because I couldn't get to the sectoid commander that was controlling him, because he had a shotgun. So he would, anytime I'd try to run past him to get to the sectoid commander, he would just stand next to them and shoot them in the face. I'd go, so yeah, it was super stressful. I really, when it was over, I went, and I was pissed off because some of my rookies turned into hero rookies and got promotions, and I was like, yay! And then they weren't in my barracks because they didn't exist. They were literally just made up for that mission. I was like, oh, damn it. Now, what else have I been doing? You remember Defense Grid? I've been playing Defense Grid a lot off stream. It's one of the earliest of the modern tower defense games that I played back on the 360 1,000 years ago.
Oh.
I'm on the last story level. It's hard. I'll take a few attempts at it, fail in new and spectacular ways, back it up a couple of checkpoints, try to outsmart the aliens that way, fail in a completely different spectacular way, and then go, and quit for a few days and start it again and repeat process. One of these days I'll get it figured out. It's hard. And I've been studying up on Baldur's Gate 3. Like, I've learned how all the different classes by and large work. I've learned how the different races work and all these D&D terms that people who play D&D just know. Mike, I know what advantage is.
Nice.
I also know what disadvantage is. These are words I've heard thrown around, but I never knew what they meant. And now that I'm trying to figure out how to build a character in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm like, oh. It's like, so I need to have someone that has guidance as one of their cantrips. Okay, got it. I know what a cantrip is, Mike. Like, the only thing I know about cantrips is when you cast them, you draw a card.
Yeah.
And I see why those are called cantrips now. Now it makes sense. Because it doesn't use a spell slot. It doesn't use a resource. So when you cast a spell, you draw a card to replace it. Hey! I'm learning. So yeah, I'm gonna stream my Baldur's Gate 3 character creation at some point, because it's gonna be a lot of me staring at the screen and going, I just have to figure out if I want to play a caster or a melee guy, Mike. Once I get that figured out, it'll be a lot simpler, because that cuts things in half.
Yeah. There'll be less like there's less like personal resource management with a fighter versus a magic user. So so that's good if you just don't want to mess with learning a whole bunch of mechanics and dealing with all that stuff. But I don't think that'll be a big roadblock
No,
or speed bump
I love
for
the,
you. Just
the
with this.
granular crap like that.
Yeah.
Like, I know roughly, I know the deal with each of the classes. Obviously, I know what all of the stats are because I've played video games my whole life. So I know how strength and dex and constitution and all of those things. I know what all those mean and what they represent. I've learned what they represent in game. I'm sort of good with some of the subclasses. But I still haven't decided if I want to be, badass barbarian or like badass warlock or something like that, because those are drastically different. So the cool thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is you can give some character you can find very early in the game 100 gold to completely respec your character. So it's not a permanent choice, which takes a lot of the pressure off. Because if I decide, I know, I'll be a sorcerer, and I decide, sorcerers are crap, I should have been a wizard, I can do that. It's easy. Or if I'm like, wearing armor's stupid, I should respec from a fighter into a barbarian, then that's also easy. And I can change the class of all of my party members too. So it's not like I have to try to figure out how to fill a hole in my... I can make everybody whatever I want. Again, for just 100 gold, which apparently in Baldur's Gate 3 is not that hard to come by. So, nice. But I still have to make that initial decision. Because playing XCOM, I have found my favorite thing to do is to zot, I can't say that on the show, zot a freaking alien from across the map and watch its head explode and go whereas when the guy with the shotgun right next to him zots it and blows his head off, I'm like, nice. But I don't get there. So I might be leaning towards a caster.
Yeah, magic users are good for that.
But then also, Ben just said barbarian seems more like you. Yeah, I also love getting all up in someone's face and crushing its skull and then picking it up and using it as a weapon. Like the enemy, picking up the enemy. Because apparently, if your strength is high enough, you can use anything as an improvised weapon. And I'm like, I really want to hit you with your own pimp. But then I have the whole party, and one of them starts as a barbarian, so it's probably fine. But anyway, that's just stuff that I've already figured out I need to go class first and then back up and figure out race. And then, skills and crap from there.
Yeah. And in the most recent, revised versions of the player's handbook and stuff, they finally have it in that order, because that's the order that makes the most sense. Yes.
Nice. Because I was looking up YouTube videos on, hey, here's what, the classes do. Every single one of them was like, ignore race, go to class first. Then
because that's
your race. And
where you decide how you actually want to play. So why not start with that?
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, I'm very excited to get into Baldur's Gate 3 because apparently it has a bunch of the freedom that you want in a video game but can't ever do. You can do that. Like, the favorite thing that I've seen is you can put a bunch of potions in a bag, throw the bag over there, and then shoot a fireball at the bag, and they will all explode, dealing, putting their statuses and damage and whatever on all of the enemies nearby. And I went, I was like, that makes me 3/4 erect. The fact that you can do that sort of thing in a video game Makes me go,
That's great.
But anyway.
Yeah. And if you need someone to give you a quick summary of classes and the difference between them, I can help with that.
Well, thank you. I've got the classes down. I've even learned the difference between sorcerers and wizards, which I never knew was a thing. But it's the subclasses, especially for like the various flavors of cleric. I'm like, oh Jesus.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
really
no,
just
the various oaths of the paladin, not the cleric. Sorry, they're more similar than I thought. All of the different flavors of subclass for paladin I saw on the list, and I went, "That's too many to read. Thanks."
Yeah, the cleric types are just a lot like the wizard types. It just affects like the spells that you're better at casting and using, and some of your divine whatever it is features. But yeah, the paladin, you get like some more substantially different perks and special abilities.
Yeah.
I don't know what all oaths Baldur's Gate 3 includes. There's a lot of different printed ones out there.
Oh. Hold on. Let me tell you. Oath of the Ancients, Oath of Devotion, Oath of Vengeance, Oath of the Crown. That's the new one that was just added like a week ago in the final patch. Every class got a new subclass. And apparently, if you screw up your oath, you can get an Oathbreaker subclass.
Yeah, so I think the first three of those you mentioned are the base ones in the player's handbook. Oathbreaker is something that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which I don't have a copy of. Oath of the Crown, I hadn't heard of that one before. You said that was new to Baldur's Gate specifically?
Yeah, I don't know if any of these, exist in D&D, but it was just added to Baldur's Gate. Yeah, and the colleges for Bard, Lore, Valor, Swords, and Glamour.
Mm-hmm.
And the circles for Druid, like a bunch of these, and all the different schools of wizardry, like, I've played Skyrim, so I get it. It's just a matter of figuring out what all these different schools are in this system as opposed to Skyrim.
Yeah.
But yeah, each...
those to figure out for yourself. That's just kind of like... Just kind of ignore the class for a minute and read about some of the special abilities. And if that sounds appealing, then make a little note of it. Like, again, for druids, their circles, it's a lot like the schools for wizards. It's just, different types of spell that you're good at. And kind of like how the Paladin Oaths does, if I'm remembering this correctly about the druid circles, it also gives you a sub list of spells that are always prepared for you no matter what, that you don't have to make a separate choice to have prepared from the list of spells that you could know.
That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Ranger subclass. We've gone way off topic here, listeners. If you're still here, hey, welcome. The Ranger subclass that just got added is so silly. Tell me if this is a thing in the game, Mike. It's called Swarm Keeper.
I have heard of the Swarm Keeper Ranger.
Okay. They can summon the cloud of jellyfish, a flurry of moths, or a legion of bees. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And then I saw in some sort of like quick video thing of just like 5 or 6 little tiny floating jellyfish around a character. And I went, I'm not going to play this, but that's hilarious.
Yeah. I don't like playing subclasses with familiars and minions in pencil and paper because it's a major pain in the ass to manage. I love doing it in digital games because the game does all that stuff for me.
Makes sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, hey, let us know, listeners, if you would like to attend a stream or listen to a podcast of Mike explaining D&D stuff to me. Because hell, I would probably enjoy that. But all right then. Well, with that, we should stop. So this has been episode 722 of the Manapool. I hope, if you're, a roguelike old hat, that this was entertaining. And if you're not, sort of like Brian, I hope that this has given you some, maybe I should check something out. But find you a genre of video game, a gameplay genre of video game that you like, there's a roguelike for it, almost certainly. So give it a shot. My top recommendations are, again, Hades, Slay the Spire, Dead Cells, and Rogue Legacy 2. There's no story to speak of that matters, so you can skip over one. One was cool back in the day. I played one not long after I got the Steam Deck. It's not. No. Play 2. 2 is so much better in every way. And if you want to play something a little more familiar, then go for Balatro, because it's poker, but a roguelike. Yay. So with that, we will stop now. So thank you all so very much for listening, and avoid the permadeath.